What's up, everyone? Welcome back to 3D and AI Masterclass. Today we are switching gears and diving into 3D. We are working with a pretty awesome scene here, so we might as well see what's under the hood. We'll cover the materials and, while we use Corona Render and 3ds Max, it doesn't really matter. We'll discuss the aspects of AI, the shading for AI, and we will discuss many cool things like one-way street rule, correct albedo, good enough normal maps, and yeah, lots of interesting stuff. So let's break down the scene and share some cool ideas as we go. Alrighty then, so this interior is definitely asset heavy. We have lots of cabinets on one side, there's a kitchen island in the center, and all of that space is filled with various details. There are also some things that look as if someone just left them behind, a meal in preparation and things like that. And interesting about everything so far is that we don't have any characters yet, but we can kind of already feel a sense of life here. We are not afraid to show the wear and tear of certain things, which make things more real. And since there's a lot going on, we'll go through the materials and put them in some sort of categories, 3 different ones. So we'll go through plaster, we'll go through woods, and we will do different stone materials the last. And perhaps after we are done with those, we'll point out some cool aspect of plants and other type of decor, but that's like a cherry on top of the cake. Okay, so first up, let's talk about plaster. And I immediately want to say that this kind of plaster tells a story. It's a story of an interior that was like repainted, remodeled multiple times. It's not clean, it has rough edges, rough textures, and many different layers to it. So this sort of plaster definitely begs for a custom shader, custom material. But what if we don't make one? What if we just add a basic material without any textures and hope AI will turn it into something like a miracle later on? So let's do that test. Here we have a render with a very basic material, with no additional textures, no gloss, no bumps, no displacement, and with that generic plaster, we are attempting to transform it into something more custom, more rustic. So you can see here, before and after, we just did our typical creative upscale with typical settings like creativity at 3, HDR at -1, and even though we get some additional details, it's kind of far from expected. That's a no from me, but maybe you can use it somehow, something worth keeping in mind. We cannot have as simple shaders as we have just showed you, but it's not as far off as you may think. Let me show you how big of a difference just an addition of a silly ambient occlusion makes. Still, no bump, no diffuse texture, just AO. Now we compare those renderings after we do the upscaling. Same as before, no prompts, creativity at 3 and HDR at -1. So now, as you start comparing the details, it immediately feels more authentic. I think the junction between the stone and the wall is much more distinct. The wall corners became more refined, which also kind of reduces the risk of AI hallucinations. And sure, it may look a bit fake in 3D, but paired with creative upscalers later on, it should add a ton of realism in post-production. So if we take a quick pause here, I really want to highlight that aspect of ambient occlusion. It's like literally no effort, but potentially can be a big difference. And there's millions of ways you can apply it, Let's say you can apply ambient occlusion to the water shader, just to have like this white edge in the material. And, that can hallucinate into foam. You can add ambient occlusion to the wood and get a rustic furniture. When you start to think about it, possibilities are endless. So ambient occlusion is very powerful. Keep that in mind. Moving on, if we look at our final shader, you can notice it's a bit more elaborated. We are using 4 different materials blended together in various ways, using ambient occlusion maps, distance maps, and everything here is just to add some sort of variety. It's a procedural material, and in whatever engine you're using, you can just go into interactive and just test it out. There's no technical secret here, just trial and error. And when you go above and beyond in 3D, it always pays off. But even now, we can take it even further. We can reach the absolute maximum quality. We can add that last 5%, which is impossible, borderline impossible to apply in 3D. It really pushes the boundaries of hyper-realism. It's like a chef's kiss, and that's what we are all about. So anyway, side note, if you're short on time and cannot prepare such a custom shader, Remember that you can use a different approach. In the bonus lesson, the previous lesson, we had the church example when we rendered multiple different images with different materials, and we used bits and pieces from each to create something custom in post-production. It was a nice and simple and pretty efficient way, so if you're short on time, you can use that one. Be sure to look up this lesson if you haven't already. Okay, so let's keep moving. The next important element is wood. Actually, a variety of different woods, from furniture pieces, ceiling beams, the kitchen island, wooden windows. It's not one type of a wood, but as a whole, it blends into one. And this whole wood aspect adds some warmth and character to the interior. And believe me or not, we can get lots of additional fidelity from AI, practically for free. We get very nuanced reflections, we get those micro details, all of that worn out look, and this is without any sweat. So when you look at these beams here, initially they have a uniform greenish tint, but then AI steps in and adds a lot of fluff that kind of breaks it up, making it so much better. You know, it was just like a uniform gloss, now it's just incredibly realistic. In our commercial work, we used to spend a lot of time of fine-tuning details like normal maps, reflection maps for wood shaders, but that's hardly the case anymore. All of those wood shaders you just saw were super basic, just like a single diffuse map and basic gloss and bump, nothing custom, nothing like no crazy resolutions. And now with this extremely simple wood shaders, everything just works, you know, pretty simple. And yeah, just don't forget about proper mapping. We need to make the grain run logically in the direction to the specific beam or wood element, because, you know, realistic, like hyper-realistic wood with bad mapping is just a mind. Okay, and by the way, here's a cool example of adding that ambient occlusion again. This is another simple wood shader for the table, but the difference is just a touch of ambient occlusion. And as you can see, AI takes that additional colors and pushes the material toward a rustic vibe. If we wanted to keep it sleek, we could keep the material as they are, but even this tiny bit of low effort ambient occlusion, you can see how significant the difference is. Okay, now the third dominant element in this space, which is the stone. It is used across, the floors, countertops, and windowsills. There's quite a range of them, from rough, natural stone on the floor to more of those sleek, polished slabs on countertops. Each type plays a different part, and funny enough, each one will work differently with AI. Generally, the more rugged and irregular the stone, the better AI tends to handle it. This floor here looks much more defined with AI, finer displacement, more fidelity, and I think it's a great example of the one-way street, which we discussed some time ago. AI always adds more gloss, more bump, more texture, more of that visual fluff, and that can be actually a double-edged sword. If your materials already have a lot of bump and micro contrast in 3D, you risk ending up with something overly detailed. You're risking ending up having this HDR effect, the extreme crispiness. So bear in mind that AI always moves one step forward in complexity, so check for or remove any excessive bumps, reflections, or displacement that could push your materials over the edge. And when it comes to other types of stones, the granite or marble kitchen countertop, I think it doesn't work at all. AI tends to break the patterns and hallucinate a lot. It's just not usable, and you should be aware of it. Anything with a pattern is a big no-no for AI. So having that in mind, we absolutely need to take care of those marbles in 3D. We need to have high-resolution textures already in 3D. And if you don't, you can use Topaz Gigapixel to enhance the resolution, so 3D rendered parts don't look blurry next to your AI upscaled layers. Okay, to wrap things up, let's throw some half-random ideas into the mix. First one being, things like plants, fruits, vases, and other accessories can greatly benefit from upscalers. Indoor plants often look fake in interiors, and it's incredibly tricky to make a shader and have the lighting that works well. But AI manages to bring that realism back, and it can make them healthy and vibrant again. Metals and glasses can also benefit from creative upscaling paths. We get that additional level of glossiness, this micro glossiness level, but be careful of hallucinations. To be extremely vigilant, weird things can happen here. And yeah, lastly, when you import some models into your scenes, just keep an eye on like a very common material errors. Sometimes the older models or automatic conversion can leave some weird stuff. You don't want to have like black spots in your images. You don't want to have extreme shininess of your materials. So watch out for some overly bright textures, unrealistic IORs like 999. Check if something is not metallic instead of plastic. Just a basic pass through materials and you should be good to go. And as a closing thought, we definitely encourage you to use high quality assets, textures, and so on. If you put more effort and care in 3D, the better and more consistent your images will look like after AI. And we are suckers for photorealism, so that's definitely how we like it. But be smart about it. Put the effort where it needs to be, prioritize the key shaders that matter the most, like plaster, woods, and stones here, and let AI handle the rest, saving you tons of time in the areas that are less critical. Thanks for sticking around and see you in the next one.